Hello, good morning. It's October 17th. Yesterday, I was feeling really unhappy, just down in the dumps. That is probably a result of like the schedule I'm keeping, and I'm taking my medication for my anxiety at different times. We just had Canadian Thanksgiving. I think over the Thanksgiving Day weekend, between working the weekend, having a day off, like staying up late, I forgot to take the medication a couple of times. I was just off yesterday, and I read a good chunk of Gideon the Ninth. This, Lesbian Necromancers in Space, is really hard to get into. It's high fantasy, and they throw like really unpronounceable names. Like they are names that are supposed to sound sort of fantastic and otherworldly, which they do, but I have this issue with a lot of fantasy. If an author gives too many weird fantasy names, it breaks my reading because every time I encounter it, I don't know how to pronounce it because it's made up. I don't think anyone has these names. Like, just added weird English diphthongs onto the end of existing names. I am enjoying myself, and I love the vibes of this book so much. I just wish it wasn't such a struggle to get into. Anyway, as you should be able to see from the title, this is supposed to be an H.P. Lovecraft vlog. If you didn't watch my TBR and you're just coming to this fresh, I debated quite a bit about putting H.P. Lovecraft on this TBR because I know biographical information about him, and he is not a human that I want to support. Here's where I run into issues with death of the author. A lot of people enjoy doing biographical readings. They enjoy learning about their authors, and they enjoy inserting biographical information and using that biographical information to understand the text. I am of the opinion that the text should stand alone. The author is dead. It's a piece of art. It is meant to be taken up by people within their cultures and interpreted and have meaning come from the people encountering the art. I give zero fucks about what the author intended and how the author wants that art to be perceived. It doesn't matter to me. The complication, I think, is when you get authors, especially now, authors do a lot of their own marketing by being accessible on social media, and the death of the author isn't possible because the brand of the author takes over. Lindsay Ellis has a great video on this, and I will link it in the description, because when I watched the brand of the author video, she articulated something that I was struggling with for years and gave it language, brand of the author. And I'm still struggling with that idea because H.P. Lovecraft is old enough that he doesn't have his own author Twitter. We don't see what he's tweeting. I don't know when I collected this information, but at some point I learned that H.P. Lovecraft is a racist garbage human. Possibly many of the authors that I have read are racist garbage people, especially as you go back in time. They're a product of their society. Here's where it all comes back to the canon, and I struggle with the canon. So if you're new, I did an English lit degree. Let's go on a little trip together. Okay, just ignore all the mess. I got up for work this morning at 3:30 and didn't make my bed. Okay, so behind me we have 4 bookshelves. 2 of these bookshelves are my read books, and the majority of the read books that I collected as an adult were because of 5 years of English lit degrees. I am sad to say that a large majority of these authors are white and male. And that shouldn't be surprising considering, so who has historically had access to education? White men. Who has historically had the knowledge to read and write? White men. So who decides what texts are worthy of continued study, of continued reading? White men. I challenge you to look at any arts department in any university, look up the professor list for the English department at any school, and you will probably see a lot of old white guys. They will be the tenured professors. I would say this is slowly changing in the university. So the texts that are deemed worthy of reading in the university are slowly changing. But for the majority of my education, and I would venture to guess your education, dear viewer, the texts that even outside of the university that you read were probably by white men. Like thinking back to high school, the texts that we read were largely white men. I would imagine it's the same in the USA. I would imagine it's the same in the UK. And okay, going back to my original point with Lovecraft, I don't know anything about these authors. I don't do biographical reading. If the author is trash, that is going to come across in their writing. J.K. Rowling is a great example of this. She's a person with a lot of power who has not bothered to educate herself. Whether she holds these beliefs actively or ignorantly, she hurts people. And you can see that in her tweets, you can see that in her updates, you can see that in what she supports, going to the brand of the author, but you can also see it in her text. The way certain characters are queer-coded, the way certain bodies are treated, right? The Dursleys, their evilness, their villainous is linked to their fatness. Hannah McGregor points out in the Oh Witch Please podcast that good people can only be pleasantly plump. They cannot be fat in this world. That race politics are made white with blood purity. The complete absence of canonically queer characters. She updates via tweet that Dumbledore is gay, but there's no textual proof unless you buy that Dumbledore wearing a flamboyant purple robe is proof. I think that's the only thing that's a little bit gay about Dumbledore. The textual diversity isn't there, so we can guess that maybe Rowling... I even hate speculating about Rowling because I don't know her as a human, but we can speculate that her politics are more conservative because her text is quite conservative, right? What am I trying to say? I don't like researching the brand of the author or the biography of the author. I don't like doing biographical readings, but I think you can get a fairly good sense of the politics of an author by looking at the politics of a text. If a text is full of brilliant white men in positions of power, and the women are all very stereotypical and in shitty roles, if people of color are entirely absent or in subservient roles or stereotypical roles or racist roles, I think we can get a fairly good sense of the type of human that would write that text. This is very ranty and it's not planned, but know that I am deeply uncomfortable with spending time on H.P. Lovecraft, and I'm trying to wrestle with that discomfort because I guess the academic in me knows that you have to go back to some of your source material to see how it works forward, to see how people are changing it, right? Like, people are playing with Dracula and Frankenstein and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. They're playing with the source material that's introduced in these foundational texts, and they're subverting it, and they're changing it, and they're making the genre better and more inclusive and allowing more people to see themselves represented in stories and in genres that they love. And to recognize that, I feel like you need to see the shitty beginnings, but part of me also feels deeply guilty for giving this human and his works any of my time. And that's I guess where I'm at. So I'm going to read a couple of stories. I'm interested specifically in the only person who I've ever heard pronounce is Robaz, a Swedish video game vlogger, and he pronounced it, I believe, Cthulhu, which I'm pretty sure is entirely wrong. He said that the first syllable pronounced gutturally and very thickly. The U is about like that in full, and the first syllable is not unlike kull in sound, hence the H represents the guttural thickness.
Cthulhu. Cthulhu. Cthulhu.
Cthulhu. All right, we're pronouncing the C. Cthulhu. Anyways, okay, so I'm going to venture into this short story collection. I guess I'm just gonna start at the beginning, read until I am sick of it, and I will update you along the way. Okay. Remember how I said that an author's politics would probably show themselves in a text? They showed themselves. I'm not going to read the exact description here about a black boxer that has been beaten to death. The text definitely dehumanizes this person of color who is described as animal-like. They speculate that the body, quote, the body must have looked even worse in life, end quote, than dead. Considering that this story is about acquiring the freshest corpses to try and reanimate them, this like description and extreme judgment of the corpse is totally unnecessary. But we get it. We get it. And I'm sure things are gonna go wrong, and it's going to be linked in part to this corpse's race specifically, because that just seems to be the nature of this text. I'm gonna keep going. All right, so Herbert West, Reanimator, is horrifying. It's very interested in death and reanimation and science and men creating life using science. So there's some perversion of that role of woman as mother, as bringing life. Maybe also the perversion of like a religious belief that God is the creator of life. Here men are the creators of life. Specifically, West is a creator of life with his scientific experiments. We can see some discomfort and some fear around science. There is definitely some racism. The solution that West invents only works on white bodies, as they find out when they steal the corpse of a murdered black man and reanimate him, or try to reanimate him, but it doesn't quite work. The way that this black body is described, like all of these reanimated corpses are horrifying things, but only the black corpse is described as monstrous and loathsome. Yeah, that's about where I'm at. So the next story is The Call of Cthulhu, whatever. It's fine. I'm gonna read it. I'm annoyed. All right, so it is 3:30. I finished my corner to corner throw. Well, I didn't finish it, obviously. There's loose threads that I have to weave in still, but technically it is now a square blanket. It's no longer like half a sandwich or whatever, you know. This is a horrible description if you don't crochet. Basically, you start in one corner and you build all the squares this way so that you're working in lines. You're not making separate squares and stitching them together. Pain in the butt with beautiful results. And while I finished this off, I was listening to Dracula, and oh my goodness, I love Dracula so much. This is a reread for me. It's just so good. It's so good. And yes, everyone in it is white. And yes, I think it's the early 1900s, so like everybody is probably still super fucking racist. But because the whole society is whitewashed, at least you're not confronted with it in the same way as with H.P. Lovecraft, who intentionally works people of color into the story to tell you about how loathsome and monstrous they are. I don't want to read this. I feel like, okay, Okay, I'm bargaining with the camera for arbitrary reasons because I promised I would make this vlog. I'm gonna finish Cthulhu. I hate this. Okay. I'm gonna finish it because that is what Lovecraft is known for. And then I'm gonna make better life choices and go with my gut in the future and not include garbage humans for the sake of understanding the canon and having the canon, whatever that means, in my back pocket. I'm not in frame at all. I would just like to point out that at the opening of Cthulhu, a professor has died because he fell suddenly from his boat after having been jostled by a nautical-looking Negro. Of course it is a person of color who kills this renowned professor. Like, the first part of this paragraph is all like, oh my gosh, this guy, he was such a great scientist, very prominent, blah blah blah, nice little 92-year-old man who was bumped by, of all humans, a person of color. Of course it's a person of color, because this author is a trash human. It's a trash human. I just finished Cthulhu, and it's super fucking racist. All of the members of the cult are people of color around the world. So there's some sort of implication, and like, oh my god, the word choice in describing these people, I can't. The real horror in H.P. Lovecraft is that people like him still exist, who think that anyone who is not white is terrible. That is the true horror that's coming away from this, which was 100% not the intent. I can guarantee that the horror is supposed to be these alien creatures that are residing at the bottom of the sea, and this cult that's trying to worship or wait out the return of these creatures. The real horror as a 2019 reader is that it's just the writing. It's the writing and the reflection on diversity, I guess, in America. That diversity was very much not welcomed by people. And I can't read any more of it. I can't read any more of it. I read 3 out of 9 stories, so 33% of these stories were racist. If there was a chance to throw a bad character in there or to make something evil or villainous, you can bet that it is a person of color. And if in the first 3 stories that is the trend, I can only imagine that the other 66% of these stories are as equally shitty. This was a fun adventure in really hammering home why we need to be super critical of canonical texts and authors. I think even if I didn't know H.P. Lovecraft's biographical information, I would have been critical of the representation of people of color in this text, so I don't think you necessarily need to know the biography of the author. This isn't me being like, I will revise my theory and suddenly do biographical readings of authors. No, I won't. I'm sure that I will stick to textual readings. Let me know your thoughts on H.P. Lovecraft in the comments down below. Have you read him in a while? If not, maybe you should revisit him if he's one of your faves. I need to go do something pleasant. I think I'm gonna walk to the mailbox and then pick up my mom from work. That's where I'm ending this vlog. At the end of the month, as this sort of percolates, I will have more formulated thoughts. I don't even know how I feel. Just annoyed. I think annoyed is the best word. Annoyed at myself for including this for feeling obligated to read part of the canon. Before we go, we do have to thank my patrons for making videos like this and long-form content possible. If you are interested in becoming a patron, links to the Patreon page are in the description box down below. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you soon. Bye.